Admiral Hyunwoo Park stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the stars through the massive viewing window. The ship floated in the empty space around Kepler 442c, a small moon that served as neutral ground between human space and the rest of the galaxy. Hyunwoo had been in the military for 30 years, but he had never seen anything like what was about to happen. The communication officer turned toward him. "Sir, we're getting a priority transmission from the Galactic Council. It's marked as urgent." Hyunwoo nodded. The Galactic Council was made up of 12 alien species that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They controlled most of the known star systems and made all the important decisions about trade, war, and peace. Humans had been trying to join their group for decades, but the Council always said they needed more time to decide. "Put it on the main screen," Hyunwoo said. The stars disappeared, replaced by the image of a tall, crystal-like creature. Its body was made of what looked like living glass, with light flowing through it in strange patterns. This was Ambassador Velthar of the Kwarnathi Empire, one of the most powerful members of the Council. "Admiral Park," the creature said, its voice sounding like wind chimes in a storm. "I bring a message from the Galactic Council to all of humanity." Hyunwoo felt his stomach drop. The formal tone and the way Velthar spoke told him this was not going to be good news. "The Council has met and made a decision about your species," Velthar continued. "Humanity has spread across 47 star systems in less than 200 years. You take resources without asking. You build colonies without permission. You refuse to follow galactic law. The Council has decided that humanity is a plague species that threatens the peace and order of the galaxy." The bridge went completely silent. Every officer and crew member stared at the screen. "Therefore," Velthar said, "the Galactic Council gives humanity this ultimatum. You have 72 standard hours to leave all colonies beyond your home system of Sol. You must return to Earth and submit to Council oversight. If you refuse, the Council will use all necessary force to remove the human threat from the galaxy." Transmission ended. The bridge stayed silent for several long seconds. "Sir?" the communication officer asked quietly. Hyunwoo stared at the empty screen. In his 30 years of service, he had seen conflicts between planets and trade disputes between species. But he had never heard of the Council declaring war on an entire species. It was unthinkable. "Send a message to Earth Command immediately," he said. "Priority Alpha. Tell them about the ultimatum." 3 systems away, Captain Min-Ho Lee was having a much quieter day aboard the exploration vessel, Pioneer's Dream. His ship was in orbit around New Sol Prime, a farming colony that grew food for 12 different human worlds. The planet was peaceful and green, with small cities scattered between vast fields of crops. Min-Ho was reviewing supply reports when his sensor officer shouted a warning. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures coming out of hyperspace." Min-Ho looked up to see dozens of alien ships appearing around the planet. They were huge vessels, each one the size of a small city. He recognized the designs from military, databases, Council dreadnoughts from at least 6 different species. "Open a channel," Min-Ho ordered. "This is Captain Lee of the UES Pioneer's Dream. You are in human space without permission. Please state your intentions." The response came not in words, but in weapons fire. The Council ships opened fire on New Sol Prime without warning. Beams of energy and streams of plasma rained down on the planet's surface. Cities disappeared in flashes of light. The beautiful green fields turned to ash and glass. In less than 10 minutes, 2.3 million people were dead. Minho watched in horror as his home colony burned. All ships! This is an emergency evacuation! Get to the surface and pick up any survivors you can find! The pioneer's dream raced toward the planet, dodging shots from the alien fleet. Minho managed to save 3,000 people from the ruins of one city before the Council ships forced him to retreat. As his ship limped away from the system, he stared at the dying world behind him. Why? He whispered to himself. Why would they do this? On Earth, Dr. So-Young Kim sat in her office, reading the reports coming in from across human space. She had not spoken to anyone from the Galactic Council in 20 years, not since she had quit her job as humanity's liaison to the alien government. Back then, she had believed that peaceful cooperation was possible. Now she knew better. The door to her office opened, and Admiral Chen Rodriguez from Earth Defense walked in. He looked tired and worried. Dr. Kim, we need your help, he said. You know the Council better than anyone. Can you tell us why they're doing this? So-Young looked up from her computer screen. Because they're afraid of us. Afraid? But they have bigger ships, better weapons, more advanced technology. How could they be afraid of humans? So-Young stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the city of Geneva. Do you know how long it took the Quarnathi to spread from their home world to their second planet? No. 800 years. The Rixtal took 600 years. The Zanari took over 1,000 years. Every species in the Council took centuries to move beyond their home system. She turned back to face the Admiral. How long did it take humans? About 50 years, Rodriguez said slowly. Exactly. And how many systems do we control now? 47. In less than 2 centuries. Do you see the problem? Every other species the Council has encountered moves slowly, carefully. They take time to adapt to new worlds. They follow established patterns. But humans? We adapt to anything. We colonize worlds that other species consider impossible to live on. We solve problems that have stumped alien scientists for millennia. Rodriguez sat down heavily. So they see us as a threat. They see us as the end of their way of life. The Council has ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years because they control how fast things change. They decide which species get new technology. They decide who can colonize which systems. They maintain order by keeping everyone else dependent on them. So-Young walked back to her desk and pulled up a star chart showing human expansion over the last 200 years. But we don't need their permission. We don't wait for their approval. We just go where we want and do what we need to survive. In their eyes, that makes us dangerous beyond measure. So what do we do? So-Young looked at the reports of the attack on New Sol Prime. She thought about the 2.3 million people who had died for no reason other than being human. We show them what dangerous really looks like. Back on the Defiance, Admiral Hyunwoo received confirmation that attacks were happening across human space. 12 colonies had been hit so far. The death toll was rising by the hour. The Council fleet was not interested in taking prisoners or negotiating surrender. They were systematically destroying every human settlement they could find. Hyunwoo called his senior officers to the briefing room. Maps of human space covered the walls, with red marks showing where attacks had occurred. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, 72 hours ago, we were explorers and traders. Today, we are at war with the most powerful force in the galaxy. They have more ships, better weapons, and thousands of years of experience. By every logical measure, we should surrender now and save what lives we can. He paused and looked around the room at the faces of his officers. But logic has never been humanity's strongest trait. What we do have is something the Council has, never faced before. We adapt, we innovate, we refuse to give up even when the odds are impossible. Hyunwoo activated a display showing the current positions of human military forces throughout the galaxy. The Council thinks they can destroy us like they destroyed New Sol Prime. They think we'll run away or beg for mercy. They're about to learn that humans don't break that easily. He looked each officer in the eye. Send word to every human ship, every colony, every outpost. The Galactic Council has declared war on humanity. It's time to show them why that was a mistake. Commander Jae Sung-yoon stood in the command center of Kepler Station, watching the approaching Council fleet through the massive observation windows. The station was humanity's largest trading hub, a spinning wheel of metal and glass that housed over 50 million people. It floated in the space between human territory and Council space, serving as neutral ground where different species could meet and trade. That neutrality was about to end. "How many ships?" Jae Sung asked his tactical officer. 237 Council vessels, sir. 12 different species. They'll be in weapons range in 4 hours. Jae Sung nodded grimly. Kepler Station had defenses, but they were designed to stop pirates and smugglers, not a full Council battle fleet. The station's 20 defense platforms and handful of patrol ships would last maybe 10 minutes against that kind of firepower. What about the civilian evacuation? We've got 300 transport ships loading people as fast as they can. But, at this rate, we can only evacuate about 10 million people before the Council arrives. That meant 40 million people would still be on the station when the shooting started. Jae Sung had been the station commander for 8 years. These people were his responsibility. "Send a message to all human ships in the system," he ordered. "Military, civilian, cargo haulers, private yachts, I don't care what they are. Tell them we need every ship that can carry people." Within an hour, ships began arriving from all over the system. Old cargo freighters that hadn't been used in years. Tourist ships that normally carried wealthy passengers on pleasure cruises. Even small personal spacecraft that could only hold a few dozen people. The captains and crews of these ships knew they were flying into a war zone, but they came anyway. Captain Do Hyun Shin arrived in his ship, the Ghost of Hiroshima. It was a small stealth vessel designed for reconnaissance missions behind enemy lines. Do Hyun was a specialist in what the military politely called unconventional warfare. "Commander Yoon," Do Hyun said over the communication system, "I've got a cargo hold that can fit 200 people. Where do you want me to dock?" "Docking Bay 7, Jae Sung replied. "And Captain? When you're done loading passengers, I have another job for you." In the engineering section of Kepler Station, Chief Engineer Yoon-ji Choi was working on something that officially didn't exist. For the past 3 years, she had been developing a weapons system based on humanity's understanding of how stars worked. The project was called Prometheus, and it was designed to turn stars themselves into weapons. The idea had come to Yoon-ji during her study of solar flares on Earth's sun. Humans had learned to predict and even trigger small flares for energy collection. But Yoon-ji wondered if the same principles could be used to create much larger flares, ones big enough to destroy entire fleets of ships. The Council species had all evolved on planets with stable, predictable stars. Their technology was built around the assumption that stars were safe, reliable sources of energy that would never change unexpectedly. But humans had grown up under a chaotic, violent star that regularly threw out bursts of radiation that could kill anyone who wasn't protected. "The prototype is ready," Yoon-ji reported to Commander Yoon. But I need to warn you, this is completely untested. It might not work at all, or it might work too well. What do you mean, too well? The stellar manipulation field is designed to trigger a directed solar flare from the Kepler star. But if I miscalculate the power output, the flare could be much bigger than planned. It could make this entire system uninhabitable. Jae Sung looked at the tactical display showing the approaching Council fleet. They would arrive in less than 2 hours now. Do it, he said. The evacuation continued as the Council fleet moved closer. Transport ships packed with refugees launched from the station every few minutes, racing toward the edge of the system. But there were still 30 million people on the station when the Council ships arrived. The alien fleet was impressive and terrifying. Massive dreadnoughts from the Kwarnathi Empire, their crystal hulls glowing with internal light. Organic-looking. Bioships from the Rixtal Collective that seemed to pulse like living hearts. Sleek geometric vessels from the Zanari hegemony that bent light around them like liquid mirrors. Admiral Kethvar of the Kwarnathi spoke to the station on an open channel. Humans of Kepler Station, you have 10 minutes to surrender unconditionally. Prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in the destruction of your station. Jae Sung activated the station's main communication array. This is Commander Yoon of Kepler Station. This station is in neutral space and under the protection of the Galactic Peace Treaty. Your presence here is a violation of interstellar law. The law no longer applies to humans, Admiral Kethvar replied. You have been declared a plague species. The treaty is void. The first Council ships opened fire on the station's outer defensive platforms. The human weapons fought back, but their missiles and energy beams barely scratched the alien ships' shields. One by one, the platforms exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Yoonji, Jae Sung said over the internal communication system. Now would be a good time. In the engineering section, Yoonji activated the Prometheus device. It was a complex array of field generators and quantum processors that had taken her 3 years to build. The machine hummed to life, sending invisible waves of energy toward the Kepler star. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The Council fleet continued its methodical destruction of the station's defenses. But deep inside the star, something was changing. The star's magnetic field began to twist and bend. Plasma that had been flowing in stable patterns for millions of years suddenly shifted direction. Enormous currents of superheated gas started building up pressure in the star's outer layers. Then the Kepler star exploded. It wasn't a supernova. The star didn't die. Instead, it threw out a massive directed flare aimed directly at the space where the Council fleet was positioned. A stream of plasma and radiation traveling at nearly the speed of light reached out like the finger of an angry god and touched the alien ships. The effects were immediate and devastating. The bioships of the Rixtal Collective simply evaporated, their organic hulls unable to withstand the star's fury. The geometric vessels of the Zanari tried to bend the radiation around them, but there was too much energy. Their light-bending fields collapsed, and the ships melted like ice in a furnace. Even the mighty Kwarnathi dreadnoughts, protected by their crystal armor and powerful shields, couldn't completely resist the stellar assault. Half the Council fleet was destroyed in the first few seconds. The rest were crippled, their systems overloaded by electromagnetic pulses from the artificial solar storm. But the victory came at a terrible price. The stellar flare was even more powerful than Yoonji had calculated. The radiation storm that swept through the Kepler system would make it uninhabitable for decades. Every planet, every moon, every space station would be bathed in lethal radiation. All ships, this is Commander Yoon, Jae-sung broadcast to the evacuation fleet. The system is compromised. All vessels proceed immediately to the jump points. Do not return to Kepler Station. The evacuation ships fled the system, carrying 20 million refugees to safety. But 30 million people were still on the station, and there was no time to get them all out. Captain Do-hyun Shin had a different mission. While the Council fleet was burning in the stellar fire, he used his stealth ship to get close to the surviving alien vessels. His ship was nearly invisible to their sensors, especially while they were dealing with radiation damage. Do-hyun's job was to plant quantum beacons on as many Council ships as possible. These small devices would track the alien vessels wherever they went, sending their positions back to human intelligence. More importantly, they would serve as targeting coordinates for humanity's new stellar weapons. He managed to attach beacons to 17 different ships before the surviving Council forces retreated. As the alien fleet limped away from the Kepler system, they carried with them the means of their own destruction. On Kepler Station, Commander Yoon stood on the bridge and watched the last transport ships disappear into hyperspace. The station was dying around him. Radiation from the artificial solar flare was already causing system failures throughout the massive structure. He had maybe 6 hours before the station became completely uninhabitable, but 30 million people were still on board. There weren't enough ships left to evacuate them all. "Sir," his communication officer said quietly, "we're receiving a transmission from the UES Defiance." Admiral Hyun-woo Park's face appeared on the main screen. "Jae-sung, we're sending every available ship to help with the evacuation. Hold on as long as you can." "Admiral, there's something you need to know. Chief Engineer Choi has successfully tested a stellar manipulation weapon. It works, but the side effects are severe. The Kepler system is lost." Hyun-woo was quiet for a moment. "How many Council ships were destroyed?" "Over 100, maybe half their fleet. Then the sacrifice was worth it. We've shown them that we can fight back. More importantly, we've shown them that we're willing to pay any price to defend ourselves." In her engineering workshop, Yoon-ji Choi was already working on improvements to the Prometheus system. The first test had been successful beyond her wildest hopes, but it had also taught her valuable lessons. President Hee-jin Nam stood in the emergency bunker beneath Seoul, watching reports flood in from across human space. The Galactic Council's third wave was coming, and this time they were targeting Earth itself. Long-range sensors showed over 500 alien warships moving toward the Sol system, the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. But Earth was no longer the peaceful world the Council remembered. "Report," President Nam said to General Bo-young-chae, the head of Earth Defense. "All orbital platforms are online and armed with the new stellar manipulation weapons. Luna Base has been converted into a fortress with enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The asteroid belt mining stations are now weapons factories producing antimatter warheads around the clock." Hyojin nodded. In the 3 months since the Battle of Kepler Station, humanity had transformed completely. The Total War Protocol had been activated on every human world. Peaceful farming colonies now manufactured weapons of mass destruction. Research stations that once studied alien biology now developed new ways to kill alien species. Even the generation ships carrying human families to distant stars had been converted into mobile weapons platforms. What about Project Prometheus? Dr. Young-Soo Han has perfected the technology. We no longer need to be near a star to use stellar manipulation. The new weapons can create artificial stellar events anywhere in space. This was the breakthrough that changed everything. The first stellar weapons had required a nearby star to work with, limiting where they could be used. But Dr. Han had figured out how to compress matter and energy into tiny artificial stars that could be triggered remotely. The result was a weapon that could create the effects of a solar flare anywhere the user wanted. On the research station orbiting Jupiter, Dr. Han was putting the finishing touches on his latest creation. The artificial stellar core was only the size of a basketball, but it contained enough compressed matter to power a small city. When triggered, it would release all that energy at once, creating a miniature nova that could destroy an entire fleet. Test. Sequence initiating, Dr. Han announced to his team. They were about to test the weapon on a series of unmanned targets placed throughout the outer solar system. The artificial star detonated in a sphere of nuclear fire that expanded at nearly the speed of light. The test targets, each one the size of a council dreadnought, were vaporized instantly. The energy wave continued outward for several light hours before finally dissipating. Success, Dr. Han reported to Earth Command. The Pocket Nova weapon is ready for deployment. Across the galaxy, Admiral Taeho Kwan was leading humanity's first major offensive operation. His target was the Proxima Centauri system, where a Council supply base supported their war effort against humanity. Kwan's fleet was small, only 30 ships compared to the 100 Council vessels defending the system. But he had something the aliens didn't expect. "Deploy the Pocket Nova," Admiral Kwan ordered. His flagship launched a single small device toward the center of the enemy formation. The Council ships detected the object but dismissed it as some kind of probe or communication device. It was too small to be a weapon. They realized their mistake when the device exploded in a ball of stellar fire that consumed everything within 10 light minutes. The entire Council fleet disappeared in an instant, along with their supply base and 3 small moons. The artificial nova burned for hours, visible from neighboring star systems. "Target eliminated," Admiral Kwan reported back to Earth. Moving to the next objective, the Council forces were learning to fear the sight of human ships. Every encounter with humanity resulted in impossible weapons and devastating losses. But they still believed their superior numbers would eventually win the war. On the planet Zeridia Prime, homeworld of the Zeridian hegemony, the alien leadership was meeting in emergency session. The Zeridians were one of the founding members of the Galactic Council, a proud species that had ruled their corner of the galaxy for thousands of years. "The humans must be stopped," declared Chancellor Vex Thul. "Their weapons are becoming more dangerous with each battle. If we don't destroy them soon, they may become unstoppable." The Council had decided to use their ultimate strategy: direct assault on human civilian targets. If they could terrorize the human population, maybe the species would surrender to save their families. They were about to learn that terrorizing human civilians was the worst possible strategy. General Subin Yang received her orders while her fleet was patrolling the border systems. Instead of defending human colonies, she was told to attack Zeridian territory directly. Her target was not the alien military but their homeworld itself. "Ma'am," her tactical officer said, "intelligence reports that Zeridia Prime has a population of 12 billion civilians. Attacking them would be exactly what they did to New Sol Prime," General Yang interrupted. "Except we're going to be more creative about it." Yang's fleet didn't attack the planet directly. Instead, they targeted the 3 moons that orbited Zeridia Prime. Using precisely controlled stellar manipulation fields, they began to destabilize the moon's orbits. The effects were gradual at first. The tides on Zeridia Prime became stronger and more unpredictable. Coastal cities began flooding as the changing gravitational forces pulled the oceans in new directions. Then the earthquakes started as the planet's crust was squeezed and stretched by the shifting tidal forces. Within a week, Zeridia Prime was experiencing natural disasters on a scale never seen before. Tsunamis hundreds of feet high swept across continents. Volcanic eruptions triggered by tidal stress filled the atmosphere with ash. The planet's weather patterns collapsed as the atmospheric pressure changed. The Zeridian government sent desperate messages to the human fleet begging them to stop the attack. General Yang's response was broadcast to every inhabited world in Zeridian space. "You declared war on human children," she said. "Now your children learn what war means." The Zeridian hegemony surrendered within a month, but the damage was done. Their homeworld would take centuries to recover from the tidal catastrophe. The other council species watched in horror as one of their founding members was reduced to begging for mercy from the species they had dismissed as primitive. Ambassador Velthar of the Quarnathi attempted to open negotiations with humanity. The crystal being appeared on communication screens throughout human space, its musical voice carrying a note of desperation. "Humans of Earth," Velthar said, "the Galactic Council is prepared to discuss terms for ending this conflict. We acknowledge that our initial assessment of your species was incomplete. Perhaps we can find a peaceful solution." The response came from Admiral Hyun-Woo Park, broadcasting from the bridge of the UES Defiance. "You declared war on our children," Park said, his voice cold as the space between stars. "You murdered 2.3 million innocent people on New Sol Prime. You tried to destroy every human colony in the galaxy. Now you want to negotiate because you're losing?" Park looked directly into the camera, and his next words were heard on 1,000 alien worlds. "There will be no negotiation. There will be no surrender. There will be no mercy. You wanted to see humanity's true nature. You called us a plague species. You were right. We are everything you feared and more. Now you burn." The broadcast ended, leaving alien leaders across the galaxy in stunned silence. They had started this war expecting to face a primitive species that would beg for mercy when faced with superior force. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. Dr. So-Young Kim, humanity's former liaison to the Galactic Council, was now serving as an advisor to the human war effort. She had spent decades studying alien psychology, and she understood better than anyone how the council species thought. "They still don't understand what they're facing," she told President Nam during a strategy meeting. "The council species evolved on stable worlds with predictable environments. They think in terms of maintaining balance and preserving order. The concept of total war is completely foreign to them." "What do you mean?" "When council species fight, they have limited objectives. They might attack military targets or contest control of specific systems, but they never try to completely destroy their enemies. The idea of wiping out an entire species is unthinkable to them." So-Young pulled up a star chart showing the current military situation. "But humans understand extinction. We've lived through ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions. We've faced complete environmental collapse and survived by adapting or moving somewhere else. When humans go to war, we don't fight to win territory or resources. We fight to eliminate threats. Permanently." President Nam studied the map. Red zones marked systems where human forces were advancing, leaving nothing behind but dead worlds and refugee streams. "Are we becoming the monsters they said we were?" So-Young was quiet for a long moment. "Maybe. But they created these monsters when they decided to commit genocide against our species. Now they have to live with the consequences. On research stations throughout human space, scientists were developing weapons that pushed the boundaries of physics, devices that could collapse space-time into deadly gravity wells, weapons that could rewrite the quantum structure of matter itself, technologies that turned the fundamental forces of the universe into tools of destruction. Colonel Jin-Woo Baek floated in the cold darkness between stars, his stealth suit making him nearly invisible to any sensors. Around him, 6 other members of the stellar arsonists moved through space like ghosts, approaching the Rixtal home system. They were humanity's most elite soldiers, specialists in what the military called deep strike operations. Their mission was simple: turn the Rixtal star into a weapon against its own people. The Rixtal were known throughout the galaxy as peaceful beings who valued life above all else. Their biotechnology was the most advanced in known space, and they had never started a war in their recorded history. But they had voted to support the Council's genocide against humanity, and that made them targets. "Team leaders, report," Jin-Woo whispered into his communication device. "Team Alpha in position near the star's corona," came the reply from Lieutenant Nari Song. "Team Beta approaching the stellar core insertion point," reported Sergeant Woo Jin Park. Jin-Woo checked his equipment one final time. The stellar manipulation device was smaller than a briefcase, but contained enough exotic matter to destabilize. A star. Once inserted into the right location within the star's core, it would cause a chain reaction that would turn the peaceful sun into a raging inferno. "Begin insertion sequence," Jin-Woo ordered. The teams moved closer to the star, their suits protecting them from the intense radiation and heat. Getting this close to a star was considered impossible by most species, but humans had learned to work in environments that would kill anything else. The device was placed deep within the star's nuclear furnace, where it began its deadly work. The star's fusion reaction started to become unstable, building toward an explosion that would sterilize every planet in the system. "Extraction in 30 minutes, Jin-Woo announced. "Move to safe distance." But as the teams prepared to leave, they detected Rixtal ships approaching their position. The aliens had somehow discovered the infiltration. "Sir," Lieutenant Song reported, "I count 40 Rixtal bioships moving to intercept us. They're trying to surround the star to prevent our escape." Jin-Woo smiled grimly inside his helmet. The Rixtal thought they could trap humans near their own star. They were about to learn why that was a mistake. "Accelerate the stellar destabilization sequence," he ordered. "We'll ride the shockwave out." The star began to convulse as its nuclear reactions spiraled out of control. Massive solar flares erupted from its surface, reaching out like fiery tentacles to grab the approaching Rixtal ships. The biovessels, evolved to work in the gentle warmth of a stable star, couldn't survive the sudden increase in radiation and heat. Jin-Woo and his team used the chaos to escape, their suits designed specifically to handle stellar environments. Behind them, the Rixtal home system burned as its own sun turned against it. Across the galaxy, similar operations were taking place. Human Special Forces teams struck at Council worlds with weapons that defied understanding. They didn't just destroy military targets. They made entire star systems uninhabitable for thousands of years. On the bridge of the UES Vengeful Sun, Captain Nari Song was tracking down Rixtal refugee ships. The peaceful aliens were trying to evacuate their surviving population to neutral systems, but Captain Song had different plans. "Ma'am," her tactical officer said, "we're detecting a Rixtal colony ship carrying approximately 50,000 civilians. They're transmitting surrender codes and requesting safe passage." Captain Song stared at the alien vessel on her main screen. She thought about the children who had died on New Sol Prime, vaporized in their sleep by Council weapons. She thought about the families torn apart when the aliens decided humans were a plague species. "Lock weapons on target," she ordered. "Captain, they're surrendering. They're civilians." "They voted for our extinction," Song replied coldly. "Fire." The Rixtal colony ship exploded in a ball of plasma, taking 50,000 innocent lives with it. Captain Song felt no guilt, no remorse. The AI system on her ship, programmed with the memories of New Sol Prime's victims, had made the decision mathematically simple. Any species that supported genocide deserved the same fate. Throughout Rixtal, space, the hunt continued. Human ships tracked down every refugee vessel, every escape pod, every attempt by the aliens to preserve their species. The Rixtal had been known for their respect for life, but humans were teaching them that some actions had consequences that lasted forever. In the laboratories of the research station orbiting Pluto, Dr. Woo Jin Park was developing the ultimate expression of human fury. The chain reaction protocol was designed to cause multiple stars to go supernova in sequence, creating a wave of destruction that could sterilize entire regions of space. "The gravitational mathematics are complex," Dr. Park explained to Admiral Hyun-woo Park during a secure communication. "When a star goes supernova, it sends out gravitational shock waves that can destabilize nearby stars. If we can trigger the right sequence, we can create a chain reaction that will destroy dozens of star systems." "How many casualties are we talking about?" "The Quarnathi control 47 star systems with a total population of approximately 600 billion beings. The chain reaction protocol would eliminate all of them." Admiral Park was quiet for a long moment. 600 billion lives. More than the entire human population. It was genocide on a scale that dwarfed anything in galactic history. "Do it," he said. The first test of the chain reaction protocol targeted the outer regions of Quarnathi space. Dr. Park's calculations were precise. The artificial supernova would trigger natural instabilities in 6 nearby stars, which would, in turn, destabilize other stars and so on. The effect was more devastating than anyone had imagined. 7 stars went nova in sequence, their combined gravitational waves reaching out across space like the fingers of death. The shock waves traveled faster than any ship could flee, catching Quarnathi colonies that thought they were safely distant from the initial attack. In the space of 6 hours, the Quarnathi lost their 7 most important industrial systems. Trillions of beings died as their suns turned into exploding balls of nuclear fire. The survivors found themselves trapped on worlds orbiting dying stars, waiting for the expanding nova waves to reach them. Ambassador Velthar, the crystal being, who had delivered the Council's original ultimatum to humanity, appeared on communication networks throughout the galaxy. For the first time, the proud Quarnathi showed fear. "Humans of Earth," Velthar said, its musical voice broken and static-filled, "we wish to discuss terms for ending this conflict. The Quarnathi Empire formally withdraws from the war against humanity and requests immediate ceasefire negotiations." The response came from Captain Nari Song, speaking from the bridge of the Vengeful Sun as it hunted down the last Rixtal refugee ships. "We don't negotiate with genocidal aliens," she said. "You wanted to exterminate us because you called us a plague species. Now you get to experience what a real plague species can do." Behind the human war effort, Ambassador Kyungmi Lim was working a different kind of campaign. She had spent years building relationships with moderate factions within the Council species, aliens who had opposed the war against humanity from the beginning. The hegemony of Veltar is willing to provide intelligence about Council military positions, she reported to Admiral Park. In exchange, they want guaranteed protection when the war ends. Similar deals were being made throughout Council space. Species that had been forced into the anti-human coalition by threats and political pressure were now looking for ways to switch sides. They provided information about Council troop movements, supply lines, and the locations of important leaders. The information allowed human forces to strike with surgical precision at the heart of Council power. Admiral Taeho Kwon led a fleet deep into Council territory, targeting the ancient fortress world of Nexus Prime, where the Council leadership had retreated. But Nexus Prime was protected by defenses that had been built over millions of years. Energy shields that could stop the blast from a supernova. Weapons platforms that could destroy entire fleets. Automated defense systems that had never failed in the history of galactic civilization. "We're going to need something bigger than pocket novas for this one," Admiral Kwon reported back to Earth Command. Dr. Young-Soo Han was already working on the solution. If the Council wanted to hide behind the ultimate fortress, humanity would develop the ultimate weapon. The Galactic Core Manipulator would use the same principles as the stellar manipulation technology, but on a much larger scale. Instead of destabilizing a single star, it would weaponize the supermassive black hole at the center of the galaxy. "The mathematics are terrifying," Dr. Han admitted to President Nam during a classified briefing. "We would essentially be turning the galaxy's gravitational center into a weapon. The side effects could be felt throughout the entire galaxy for millions of years." "What kind of side effects?" "Gravitational anomalies, stellar drift, possible collapse of several spiral arms. We could accidentally trigger a galactic-scale extinction event." President Nam looked at the reports of human casualties flowing in from across space. The Council was still fighting, still killing human civilians wherever they found them. The war had gone beyond any hope of peaceful resolution. How long would it take to build this weapon? 6 months, assuming we can gather enough exotic. Admiral Hyun-Woo Park stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the greatest fleet in human history prepare for the final battle. 10,000 ships stretched out before him, each one crewed by humans who had never known peace, only war. They had grown up watching their worlds burn, their families die, their species fight for survival against impossible odds. Now, they were about to end that war forever. The target was Nexus Prime, the ancient artificial world at the center of the galaxy where the Galactic Council had made their final stand. The ring world was older than Earth's solar system, built by species that had died out before humans evolved. It was protected by defenses that had never been breached in millions of years of galactic history. Fleet Admiral Bo Young Che reporting, came the voice over the communication system. "All ships are in position. The Galactic Core Manipulator is online and ready for deployment." Admiral Park looked at the tactical display showing the enemy forces. The combined might of the remaining Council species was gathered around Nexus Prime, over 50,000 ships representing the survivors of a dozen different civilizations. They were making their last stand in the place where their ancestors had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. "Dr. Han, status on the core manipulator?" "All systems are green," Dr. Young-Soo Han replied from his position aboard the research vessel Einstein's Dream. "The exotic matter containment fields are stable. We can weaponize the galactic core black hole on your command." Admiral Park thought about the long journey that had brought humanity to this moment. 2 years ago, they had been peaceful explorers and traders trying to join the galactic community. Now, they were preparing to destroy that community completely, using weapons that could reshape the very structure of the galaxy. Admiral Kethvar of the Quarnathi Empire is requesting communication, his communication officer reported. The crystal being appeared on the main screen, its once bright form now dim and flickering. The proud Quarnathi had lost most of their territory to humanity's stellar weapons, and their remaining population was crowded onto refugee ships and borrowed worlds. Admiral Park, Kethvar said, its musical voice filled with desperation. We offer the unconditional surrender of all Council forces. We will withdraw from all human territory. We will pay any reparations you demand. Please. There has been enough death. Park looked at the alien commander who had once threatened to exterminate humanity. Do you remember your words to me 2 years ago, Admiral? You called us a plague species. You said we threatened the peace and order of the galaxy. You gave us 72 hours to submit to Council oversight or face total annihilation. That was a mistake. We were wrong about your species. We didn't understand— No, Park interrupted. You understood perfectly. You saw that humanity was different from the species you had controlled for thousands of years. You saw that we would never accept your dominion. So you decided to destroy us. The Admiral gestured toward the tactical display showing the human fleet. You succeeded in one thing, Admiral Kethvar. You showed us what we really are. We are everything you feared and more. We are the species that burns stars and breaks worlds. We are the ones who turn the very structure of the galaxy into a weapon. Kethvar's crystal form seemed to dim further. What do you want from us? Nothing. There will be no surrender. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. Today the Galactic Council dies. The final battle began with the Council forces launching a desperate assault on the human fleet. 50,000 alien ships attacked in coordinated waves, their commanders knowing this was their last chance to prevent humanity from seizing control of the galaxy. The battle was unlike anything seen before in galactic history. Council bioships that could regenerate from any damage met human vessels armed with weapons that rewrote the laws of physics. Ancient dreadnoughts protected by force fields powered by dark matter fought against ships that could create miniature black holes as weapons. For 6 hours, the space around Nexus Prime burned with the light of dying civilizations. Entire fleets were destroyed in minutes, only to be replaced by fresh waves of ships from both sides. The artificial gravity of the ring world itself fluctuated as massive explosions warped space-time, but humanity had learned something during their war against the Council. They were willing to pay any price for victory. Human captains rammed their ships into enemy formations when their weapons failed. Entire squadrons sacrificed themselves to clear paths for the fleet's advance. Dr. Han, Admiral Park said as the battle raged around them, "Deploy the Galactic Core Manipulator." Deep in the research vessel Einstein's Dream, Dr. Han activated humanity's ultimate weapon. The device sent out waves of exotic energy toward the supermassive black hole at the galaxy's center, 26,000 light-years away. The energy traveled through hyperspace, reaching its target in seconds rather than millennia. The effect was immediate and terrifying. The black hole's accretion disk began to glow brighter as its rotation sped up. Gravitational waves rippled out from the galactic core, traveling at the speed of light toward every star system in the galaxy. Gravitational resonance cascade initiated, Dr. Han reported. The galactic core is now under our control. Admiral Park smiled grimly. Target Nexus Prime. The black hole at the center of the galaxy suddenly changed its gravitational output, creating a focused beam of space-warping energy that reached across 26,000 light-years in an instant. The ancient ring world, protected by the most advanced defenses ever built, simply ceased to exist as the fundamental structure of space-time around it collapsed. The Council fleet watched in horror as their ultimate fortress was crushed out of existence by forces beyond their comprehension. Nexus Prime, the seat of galactic government for 10,000 years, was reduced to an expanding cloud of exotic particles in less than a second. All Council ships, this is Admiral Park. He broadcast on all frequencies. Your government is dead. Your ultimate weapon has failed. You have one choice: surrender unconditionally or join your leaders in oblivion. The response was immediate. Across the battlefield, Council ships began powering down their weapons and broadcasting surrender codes. The fight went out of them when they realized that humanity had weaponized the very center of the galaxy itself. 3 months later, Dr. So-Young Kim stood in the ruins of the Council chambers on what remained of Nexus Prime. The ring world had been partially rebuilt as a symbol of humanity's new dominance, but the scars of gravitational manipulation were still visible throughout the structure. She was reading the surrender documents that had been signed by representatives of every surviving Council species. The terms were simple and brutal. Complete submission to human authority. The aliens would keep their homeworlds, but under human oversight. Their military forces would be disbanded. Their technology would be shared with humanity. Most importantly, they would never again be allowed to make decisions about interspecies relations. That authority now belonged to humanity alone. Dr. Kim, a voice said behind her. She turned to see Admiral Park approaching, wearing the uniform of the new Galactic Emperor, a title that would have seemed ridiculous 2 years ago. "How does it feel to rule the galaxy?" she asked. Park looked out through the chamber's windows, at the stars beyond. "Like a responsibility I never wanted but can't avoid. The Council species still outnumber us 1,000 to 1. They're only submitting because they fear our weapons. That fear is the only thing keeping the peace. And if that fear fades, then we remind them why they feared us in the first place. On Earth, Captain Minho Lee, now governor of the Sol Memorial Sector, was overseeing the construction of monuments to humanity's war dead. The memorial on Luna honored the 2.3 million people who had died in the first attack on New Sol Prime. Similar monuments were being built throughout human space, each one bearing the same inscription in dozens of alien languages. Here died those who thought humanity could be caged. The galaxy had learned to fear the sound of human voices, the sight of human ships, and the terrible creativity of human minds. Children on alien worlds were told stories about the species that could turn stars into weapons and black holes into tools of war. In the rebuilt council chambers, Admiral Park addressed the representatives of the surviving alien species. The proud beings who had once ruled the galaxy now sat in silence, listening to the words of their new human overlord. "You came to us in peace. We would have joined your council as equals," Park said. "You came to us in war, and we showed you what war really means. You proclaimed us a plague species, and you were right. We are the plague that ends civilizations that think genocide is acceptable." He gestured toward the stars visible through the chamber's great windows. "This galaxy belongs to humanity now. We will rule it as we see fit. Some of you will be allowed to rebuild under our supervision. Others who participated in the genocide against our people will find that some acts can never be forgiven. The A. Rikstal delegation was notably absent. Their entire species had been hunted to extinction by Captain Narration and others like her. The hegemony of Veltar, which had switched sides early in the war, was allowed to keep limited autonomy. The E. Quarnathi, reduced to a few million survivors, existed only at humanity's sufferance.